Hey guys, this is Justin, hello, and welcome to another video. You'll have to excuse my voice. I decided to take up smoking recreationally. No, I actually just have a bit of a cold. Nothing serious whatsoever, it's just affecting my voice. But today we'll be talking about one of the more interesting ships in the Star Wars Legends universe, the Hapan Battle Dragon. I thought this was a good topic for today's video, where we spent yesterday talking about ships which look like real-world animals. The Battle Dragon obviously doesn't look like a dragon, but with the name, the connection's there, I think. So, the Battle Dragon was the main warship of the Hapan Royal Navy. Not the only warship, they also did have, for example, the Bird of Prey, or rather, the Nova Cruiser, but it was definitely the most iconic Hapan ship by far. For those who don't know, the Hapes Consortium was an isolationist faction within the Hapes cluster, which was actually powerful enough to even resist Imperial influence. In fact, the prologue for the Essential Guide to Warfare details the unfortunate fate of an Imperial ship which was sent into the Hapes cluster. Of course, the Imperial ship is destroyed immediately by a fleet of Hapan Battle Dragons and Nova Cruisers, and in an exosuit, the Imperial officer thinks the Battle Dragon approached like an underwater Leviathan. She passed right below me. She was far enough away that it didn't impact her particle shields, but close enough that I could count the rungs of the ladder well on her sensor masts. They were crowned by running lights, which left spots on my vision when they flashed. I won't spoil the prologue because it's quite fun and there's a nice twist, which I think you guys will enjoy. Anyway, after the fall of the Empire, the Hapans do maintain their sovereignty, but ally with the New Republic, as we see in the courtship of Princess Leia. That book starts off with Han Solo leading a task force back to Coruscant, and the planet being surrounded by dozens of battle dragons and dozens of Star Destroyers. Han thought the New Republic was under attack, but in fact, the Star Destroyers had been captured by the Hapans and their battle dragons after the fall of the Emperor. That book is probably also the best single source if you want to learn more about the Hapans. When I say they were isolationist, they were isolationist. Not only did they resist Imperial incursions into their territory, but just generally, they didn't allow outsiders to travel throughout the Hapes cluster. That book also tells us that there's at least 63 battle dragons in the Hapan fleet, probably a lot more, and that represents one for every inhabited planet in the consortium. But let's talk about the ship itself. I've given you all the context about Hapes that I think you need. Let's talk about the Battle Dragon. First off, the logical comparison is the Star Destroyer. The Battle Dragon sort of occupies the same role in the Hapan fleet, but it's obviously much smaller. According to the courtship of Princess Leia, the Battle Dragon is 1/3 the size of the Star Destroyer, and that holds up in the lore where it's given a specific length of 500 meters. The single most notable element of the Battle Dragon is easily its weaponry system. Notice the saucers on the craft ringed by weapon emplacements. This was actually something to make up for a weakness of the Hapan Navy, and really, to a degree, all starships. In Star Wars, there's a recharge or recycle time on guns. In other words, you can't continuously fire a turbo laser or an ion cannon. The guns will need to recharge and probably cool down. The Hapans countered this by essentially making their guns rotate. So one would fire, it would slide out of the way, the next would slide into position. All in all, there were 40 ion cannons and turbo lasers affixed to the top and bottom canopy of the ship. Additionally, the Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels also makes clear that there were some heavier weapons, including a pulse mass generator, which continually faced forwards. We'll come back to the general weaponry in a second, but the pulse mass generator is interesting in and of itself because aside from perhaps some offensive utility, the weapon was mostly used to generate simulated mass shadows, which operated like interdiction mines. But again, though, this wasn't just meant to be a general improvement on technology. As pointed out to the Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels, which has a full section on the Battle Dragon, although the new Essential one doesn't for some reason. The saucer weapon rotation system was meant to compensate for weapons which were significantly behind. Imperial technology in the book specifically says that they recharged at 1/3 the rate, though did a comparable amount of damage. In terms of technology, the targeting computer of the Battle Dragon was also not very good. The same source notes that while a Battle Dragon can pinpoint target a single enemy, it's not effective against multiple ships, so we're starting to see a real disadvantage of the weapon system here. On a Star Destroyer, you can easily engage multiple enemies at once, and that gives you more freedom in terms of positioning. You can hit ships with your broadside while focusing certain lasers straight ahead. Battle Dragons not only cannot do that, but have to operate in a swarm against a large number of enemy ships, even smaller vessels. Aside from their guns, the Battle Dragons did of course also have hangars and could field a full 3 squadrons of starfighters. When I think of Battle Dragons, though, I think of Hapes as a whole. It's flashy, it's elegant, it's beautiful, but I do think sometimes that perhaps impacts the effectiveness. Or that could be going too far. It doesn't necessarily impact effectiveness, but not all of the additions to the Battle Dragon are meant to be more than ceremonial or aesthetic. In terms of weaponry, before we continue, Hapans were also known to have effective ion cannons, so although the turbo lasers were lagging, the ion cannons were still fairly effective. In terms of where this ship really prospered and where it struggled, the Battle Dragon was great, according to the Starships of the Galaxy Guide, at pursuing small, fast ships. And I mean, this makes sense. It has accurate lasers, it's probably got good pursuit speed, and it does have those pulse mass generators. However, get more than one ship involved in a single Battle Dragon is going to have a hard time, especially because of those targeting issues I mentioned. Well, the Hapans did improve their turbo laser technology throughout Star Wars history. I don't think there's any evidence that they made the same advancements in terms of their targeting systems, although I'd be happy to be corrected on this because I'm not really sure. That could be somewhere in the legacy of the Force series. Battle Dragons were exceptionally weak against starfighters, and that's where support ships like the Nova Cruiser came in to try to help out. Just to end this video, I'll very briefly touch on the history of the Battle Dragon, because if you read Star Wars Legends, this is a ship that appears the most. I would say it's probably the most used capital ship outside of those by maybe the Empire and the New Republic, and arguably the Yuuzhan Vong, although even there, I'd still say the Battle Dragon appears more overall. That's because the ship first appeared in the courtship of Princess Leia, but Hapes would play a major role in the Yuuzhan Vong War. They, of course, got destroyed at the Battle of Vondor by Centerpoint Station. Many Battle Dragons would have been lost there. The Hapans also end up factoring really heavily into the legacy of the Force series. That's because Jason Solo ends up having a child with a Hapan woman, and the Hapes are always being sought by both the Jedi faction and also the GFFA. It's basically like if you need a fleet to turn the tide, the Hapans are one of the first people that will be called. But guys, that's all I have for today. Let me know what you think of the Battle Dragon. Do you like the design? I personally really like the fact that Star Wars took an isolated faction and gave them somewhat divergent technology. That's also something we see in the new canon Thrawn novels, where their shielding and weapon technology is way behind anything that the main galaxy is using. But until next time, guys, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.